Cutten complex, a combination of 4 buildings housing sophomore students. Many do not know much about the man the building is named for, Colgate University's 8th president, George Barton Cutten. While he did oversee a substantial amount of growth on campus, Cutten's legacy is tarnished by speeches that were social Darwinist by today's standard. Was Cutten in fact a social Darwinist? If so, can his views be excused by the popular sentiment of his time, or do his critics provide enough evidence to discredit him? Let us examine Cutten's inaugural address and the public reaction to it. On a cool sunny morning at 10:30 on October 7, 1922, Cutten took the stage to give his inaugural address to 2,500 members of the Colgate community. The focus of the address was democracy. Cutten opened with the statement, quote, "The popular idea of democracy is a delusion. The world has never seen such a democracy, and from the nature of the case, it never can," end quote. The idea that all men are created equal is a fallacy. People are born with varying levels of intelligence, so they cannot be equal to each other. Rule by the, quote, "intellectual aristocracy," end quote, was what society needed. Government should be, quote, "of the people, for the people, by all those of their number fitted by intellectual ability, moral ideals, and careful training," end quote. Cutten believed that IQ tests should be used to determine which individuals belonged to the intellectual aristocracy and which did not. Those who belonged would be educated, while those who did not would be given jobs that reflected their level of intelligence, such as manual labor. Cutten concluded his speech with a prayer saying, quote, "Father, I pray not for the world, but for those thou hast chosen out of the world," end quote. Higher intelligence is a God-given gift. Those who have it and the moral training necessary to channel it will be the most likely to succeed in society.
President Cutten's speech was met with general approval by Colgate students and the press. One New York newspaper admired Cutten's honest, candid talk as opposed to pet catchwords and lies used by politicians of the day. At least Cutten had the courage to stand up for his convictions, unlike his, quote, "pedagogical colleagues," end quote, or the cowardly politicians who tricked the people with false democratic slogans. Not all reactions to the address were positive, however. John Dewey, an extremely influential educator and staunch supporter of voting rights for all, called the address shocking and unintellectual. Dewey criticized Cutten's ideas on IQ tests and classism. To Dewey, the goal of an IQ test should be to estimate the potential of an individual, not to force one into a certain career. Dewey also felt that Cutten was a backwards-thinking elitist. The Roaring Twenties were an era when rags to riches capitalism, expressed in such stories as The Great Gatsby and Hoover's slogan of rugged individualism, framed the American spirit. Dewey was shocked that Cutten would suggest that IQ tests should determine someone's fate, just as a caste system does in India. Debates still rage on today on the legacy of President Cutten and whether or not the Cutten complex should be renamed. It is clear from Cutten's address that he was a social Darwinist. Though his words were very much the popular sentiment of the time, John Dewey provides enough evidence to show that this cannot excuse his beliefs, which were not only ignorant but also harmful to the progression of modern education.